So anyway, sorry to be late. I don't know what was happening. I was being blocked out somehow electronically, and maybe just by chance, maybe not. It doesn't matter. But anyway, I managed to get back, and I was just thinking, when I didn't realize that it was going to be delayed, I was going to start telling you, because we are getting some new listeners, and I wanted to tell them what Church of the Essene Teacher was. But I had this really weird experience. Like, I realized what I'm trying to convey on this show, and feel really totally inadequate to do. As soon as I open my mouth, I realize I've completely blown it, because I don't know how to fit it in words. But if I just stay here and be quiet, it probably won't, have very much of an impact that way either. So even though I know it's imperfect, I have to try to talk about it. And it's called Church of the Essene Teacher. For anybody that hasn't already been listening, it's not a religious show, and I want everybody to feel free to keep your own philosophies and religions and beliefs and everything. It's totally not about that. It's named Church of the Essene Teacher, which I really had no intent to make it into any kind of a church at all, but it's after the Essene Teacher mentioned in the Essene Gospel of Peace, which Doug has made possible to see on our website, both in, I think there's PDF link there, but you can also just type it into a search engine, Essene Gospel of Peace, Book 1, ESSENE, and it'll come up for free. Somebody typed the whole thing into the internet so you don't have to buy it, which is kind of fortunate, because right now it's not totally in print. I mean, there's a few copies out there on Amazon, but I've been asking the lady that has the rights to it to please print it again, and I haven't gotten a response in the last year and a half or so from her. So it's nice that it's up there on PDF. It's just that those things can disappear. Not that I want it to, but that's what we're kind of referring to in this show. And again, not any suggestion to change belief, but it's more like talking about open-minded exploration. And that's something that we can relax and do, because if you get any kind of direct perception from inside yourself, there's a deep knowing that the reality is something really good, especially when you start getting in touch with it more and more. And then you're no longer afraid to explore. And, a common theme in the authorities, whether they're political or religious, that they want you to stay terrified of everything that they don't sanction as okay for you to think about. And that's not really, it's not real spiritual exploration. It's not real science. It's just what, our society is kind of intentionally devolved into under the control of some not very friendly rulers at upper level right now. That's not a level of people that you hear the names of, but the ones who are really in charge probably don't even use names, at least the ones that we know. And they want you to be scared of everything. And so we thought, all right, great, that's the government seal of approval program on saying fear has no real use, and it's not going to lead to finding out anything that you need to discover. So it's more like Dr. or Bill Bankston, he likes to be called Bill, said when he was on our show a few weeks ago about science, that he impressed me as being a real scientist, because he's not one of these guys that is out there hired to prove that geoengineering is saving the world from, the climate change, or that GMOs are going to save everybody from starvation, or that vaccines are safe and effective. The best economic paying jobs in science right now are proving those things. You get shown what to prove, and then you set up the experiment, and you write the report, and you prove it, that vaccines and drugs, which really, don't be fooled by names, drugs are toxic chemicals. And if you're a scientist that proves that toxic chemicals are the way to health, and you make a few more $1 billion for the drug companies, then you get a real good paying job as a scientist. But as Bill Bankston was pointing out, that has nothing to do with actual science. And if you get a tyrannical religious leader, deciding that they want all your money and all your thoughts and to control your life, and they tell you this is the only thing that's true, and if you even think about anything else, or find anybody else that does, the best thing for them really is they have to be killed. And I'm not advocating that, by the way. I'm just using that as an example that's different than what we're suggesting here, which is open-minded exploration and the kind that takes courage. But you have the courage because you know that if you're after what's true and you get to what's true, you're going to find the most amazing, wonderful thing that you can imagine, in fact, way beyond what you can imagine. So you don't worry about it at all and you don't have any fear. So as most of you know, I started this health research thing in 1965, which seems like a few minutes ago to me, and I was motivated, like a lot of people are who get into that, by bad health problems. Most of us, if we feel okay, it would never occur to us to question whether our lifestyle or what we're eating or how we're sleeping or anything is really good for us or not, because we feel fine. And one of the things that fools people on this 3D level that we call real life is the time lag. Compared to other levels, this is a very slow and dense frequency, and it allows you to have certain kinds of experience. But one of the characteristics of it is that there's a time lag between what you set in motion and the result. Usually, I mean, sometimes it's instant, but on higher levels of frequencies, it really is instant all the time. And you don't want to be there until you've really got your focus and your mind and your emotions directed the way that you want, because if you're still in the point of them running all over the place, chaotically coming up with all these bizarre, really hideous thought patterns and stuff against yourself and against other people, if you were on a higher level right now where you get instant effect, you wouldn't really like that. So in a way, the time lag is good because it gives you a chance to, reconsider before you put a lot of focus into something that you don't want the result of. But it's also, it makes it harder to understand that you're directing your whole life, because you put the cause into motion and you don't see the effect until sometimes much later, and then it's easy to blame it on other people or circumstances or whatever is happening in your life that you don't really like, and not see that the cause was something that you did, which is always the case. And most people don't want to look at that because it's just so much more convenient to blame everybody else, and everybody else is obviously doing all these bad things, and these circumstances and bad luck are happening, and so it seems like that's, the thing to blame everything that we don't like on, or insane leaders or things like that. But at a very deep level, when you take responsibility that it's all you, even when that's counterintuitive, what it does is it gives you massive power to make things better in your own life. And if you don't do that, and you operate under the belief system that it's everybody else, and bad luck and circumstances and insane people and all this stuff, which on the surface it is, but if you stop there, you have no power to change it, and you live as a victim your whole life. So considering which of those would be better, it's like one of those deals where you say, let me think. No, it's really a lot better if you have complete control over directing how things go in your life, and the only way you can get there is take responsibility for what's already happening and start digging into the cause, which is always internal. It's so tempting to go and fight the bad people, and I've been strongly tempted in that direction, thousands of times, but it just has bad results, because when you're trying to fix it by fighting, you're broadcasting a frequency of contention and fighting, and that attracts more of the same thing. And I know it sounds crazy. It sounded crazy to me for a long time, and I say, what, are you out of your mind that these people are right in front of you doing all these terrible things? And you may have to defend yourself, excuse me, or defend other people or do something for some cause, and that's great. But at the same time, in the background, once you get to a certain level of realization of what's going on, you start saying, wait a minute, these may be high-tech mirrors, but they're mirrors. And what is it that they're reflecting? And it's always inside you. So even though it's paradoxical, for every single person in existence, it's still true that they're the cause of the whole thing, which means that any of us, and especially a few of us working in harmony, have a chance to change the direction that things are moving. And that's part of the reason I'm wanting to do this, is because I spent in the last 20 years or so of the work that I was doing in health research, which got into consciousness inevitably. During the last 20 years of that, I did a really in-depth investigation of the economic and political power structure that's running the country and that's been in control of America and most of the world for a long time. So I know, as many of us do, that what they're doing to us now, how these dots fit together, what they're planning for the immediate future, how and why, and that sort of thing. And I don't want to see that happen, because even if we are not here all that long, there are kids and babies being born, future generations that are coming up, and it would be better if they have a good place to live their lives. So one thing that we can do, we're leaving regardless, we're only here for a short time, but during the time that we're here, it's also a huge benefit for us in our deeper level lessons to see what can we do that's helpful before we go. So anyway, 10 years after I started all that, I came across the Essene Gospel of Peace, Book 1, and it matched some of the memory I had of things long before this lifetime, which I still have, and in fact, they're a lot clearer now than they were for much of my life. And it was about teaching laws of nature, using them to heal ourselves, and then going much further from there into the internal work. So that all started before I really got sharply aware of what the global rulers were doing and what their plans are. And when I did get into that, I realized the goal is not population reduction. That's a step. But the goal is population elimination, as far as I can see it now. And anything that I share with you, I'm completely open to being wrong and, revising how things look. And this is one reason I feel completely, inadequate to be talking to you guys, because all of us are subject to error, and I'm constantly refining what it looks like to me. But as far as I can tell, the people at the top levels of power, which are way above the banks and the government heads and all that, they appear to be involved in a ceremonial sacrifice. But this time it's not an animal or a person, it's the whole biosphere. And it's the only thing that's made sense to me about, they know what GMOs are doing. They know exactly what vaccines are doing. These are not stupid people in the obvious way. They know what nuclear power is, that it's guaranteed to destroy the planet if you leave it running long enough. There's no way it wouldn't. All the plants are beyond their, suggested lifespan right now, and they're still being allowed to run. Well, that's not because those guys just couldn't figure it out. They knew that when they were designing them. And it's the same thing with the fake education and the fake science and the fake medicine, where you have toxic chemicals that are guaranteed to destroy your body, but they have one characteristic, that one thing that they would cover up, a symptom of some supposed disease, right? Or they stop your headache or whatever while they destroy your liver. And so they call all the bad things they do side effects and put them in microscopic print. And the one thing that they figure they could fool you into, because it might make you feel less conscious of your pain or something temporarily, that turns out to be the main advertised effect. These are toxic chemicals that will hurt you or more. And they're called medicine. And so we fall for it because they're called medicine, and they come from official agencies that are taking care of you, like CDC and other government agencies, FDA people that are there just selflessly working as hard as they can day and night to make sure that all these products are safe, except the whole thing is false. And that's really hard for most people to grasp, because even what was in Vaxxed, which was practically nothing, that was so shocking to people. A lot of doctors were just, some of them said they were shattered because CDC was shredding documents to hide the fact that vaccines caused autism. You know, how could that be? That it's almost like that we've been trained to worship these authorities, especially if they have the right costume and the right title and the right degree, and maybe some awards and stuff. And it's just really earth-shaking to realize all of that's fake. You know, Matt Dillon may have been a really selfless servant in Gunsmoke, taking care of the town and risking his life in showdowns all the time, but we didn't realize we were being trained subconsciously that he is the archetype of the government protector. And we've been trained like that for decades, our whole life. But I'm really interested not just in saying that things are bad, because what use is that? It's almost like it's not even a good idea to know unless you can do something. So I'm really interested in solutions. Otherwise, I would be doing something else instead of the radio show and the other things that we're doing. So I don't think, you know, looking at the people that are in power now, I really don't think that it's practical that they're going to be overcome by some good guys through force. I think they would like that to be the effort, and they want to incite that kind of violence if they can, because it's a perfect excuse for them to bring out the weapons that you haven't seen yet. And under those circumstances, in their minds, they would be justified in taking the population down by 90% or so, make things more peaceful again. So I don't think that would be a really good plan on our part, or anybody's part. So I'm not advocating preemptive violence of any kind, or offensive violence. I think you may have to use violence if your life is threatened and you have to defend yourself or your family, and the right to do that is one of those unalienable rights that the founders of America talked about, that do not get granted by governments, although ours in America happens to recognize it in the Second Amendment, which is really good, but it's there regardless. But that's a use of force that might be unavoidable, but it's not the solution. So then what's the solution? You know, that's the whole question. And that's really what the show is about in a way. I mean, we're sharing information that hopefully you could use yourself to minimize avoidable suffering in your life, health situations and stuff. And by the way, this for the benefit and in honor of all the people monitoring our show, you know, through government agencies and other things, we're not offering any kind of medical advice or diagnosis or cures or anything whatsoever to do with medical anything. I mean, we urge you to immediately go to your medical doctor and get all possible drugs that you need and have the organs that need to be cut out removed as soon as possible. Get radiation, chemotherapy, whatever your doctor thinks is good for you. And we're not in that business. So let's see, what else can I say for a good disclaimer before we get into this stuff? That by listening to this show, you agree that this is all for entertainment purposes only, and you agree never to try anything I have suggested. And that should do it pretty much. I mean, one of the things that brought that to mind recently is I was interviewed on a show this week that determined fairly quickly that I hate women, I hate the environment, and a few other things that I hate, and I'm just a, hateful type person. And the host of it, though, recommended that everybody go to lostartsradio.com and listen to the show to hear what a completely crazy person, who hates all these things would say. And I just want to thank that host for suggesting that, because as long as you realize I'm just a crazy person who hates everything good, then you won't ever take what I say seriously, and we can continue discussing this without being interpreted as giving medical advice. So that's my best effort at a disclaimer for now. But so realizing the crazy nature of what I'm sharing with you, what I'm saying, since force is not a practical or advisable way to turn things around, then the alternative is, and this is really hard to put into words, but we're not the limited, temporary, low intelligence, dependent, totally oblivious beings that we're told that we have to be. That was drilled into us so that we'd be dependent on authorities who could then take everything you've got and tell you what to think, and then dispose of you when they want to, which is coming right up in their plans. And I'm suggesting that's not really who you are. And the biggest taboo, more than the fact that they put nagalase in the vaccines to destroy your immune system on purpose, that's what vaccines are for, it's much bigger than that. That the bigger taboo secret is that you have unimagined normal abilities that we've forgotten a long time ago. And if you get those back, the only way to fully get them back is past the fail-safe mechanism that's built into consciousness. And the reason that the nasty rulers can't match what we could do is that you can't get anywhere on the real spectrum of power if you have any malice toward anybody. I don't care if they're bad guys. I don't care if they're drinking blood in satanic ceremonies, which, by the way, they are, some of them. If you have any malice toward anybody, you can't get beyond the very tiny bit of power that only looks good from underneath. And that's the perspective with which, or from which, we're looking at the power structure that's running the world. It's from a very low perspective. Everything is relative in this place. Let's say that you were an infinitesimal speck in the middle of a grain of sand, and you were looking out at the edges of the grain of sand and say, wow, that edges of this grain of sand are overwhelmingly huge, because you're the size of, a millionth of a micron or something in the middle. The edge of the grain of sand looks big. That is why the negative hierarchy in the power structure is so impressive. It's because they've gotten us down to looking at it from a point of view that's so tiny, so compressed, so self-degrading, and assuming that you have nothing, and that, anything that you want is bad, anything that you can do is bad, you're just a worthless being. That's exactly where they want you. The reality is, if you learn how to bring your life into harmony with where you came from, then it's safe to let you handle more of your normal power and abilities. And once a small number of us get into that harmonious frequency and regain that awareness, then this game of the old destroy the world ploy that's going on right now, that's over. And things come back into balance. So I hope some of that's intelligible. I think I did probably a terrible job explaining it, but that's really what the point is. And so there's two levels. One is to use these things when you want to overcome health and life challenges. And the other one is to become part of kind of like positively terraforming the atmosphere of this planet, opposite to what the rulers are doing, because they are right now terraforming it. Geoengineering is a part of that, so that it will not be conducive to any normal life, which is not a very good idea, especially for us. So, some of these things are somewhat publicly known, like the GMOs include replacing all the regular forests with GMO trees, which universities are working on right now, Cornell and other ones, in cooperation with the biotech companies in exchange for massive amounts of money. And the kind of trees they're producing are toxic. They grow in rows like corn. That's their new forests idea. And I just think nature is better. So how do we really get back in touch with any way to work to heal these things back to our normal status? Because we're the sons and daughters of something really beyond explanation that's amazing. We're just suffering from amnesia. And all the great teachers that have come at all the different times and places in the universe and other universes, and they've all just tried to shake us out of that amnesia and remind us that they're an example of what we can become. And that's true. There's no ego in it at all. So how do you start to do that? Well, using those laws of nature that we talk about to get your health back is a good start. And that's enough to get rid of a lot of the causes of suffering in people's lives, especially when they've been here for a while. They start to fall apart because they've made so many mistakes in eating and lifestyle and all kinds of stuff, and taken drugs at the recommendation of these experts and gotten addicted to the drugs, which is one of the purposes of the medical industry. And so it takes a while to reverse all that stuff. But beyond getting your health back and not having to suffer through all that junk as much as you would have, if you go much further than that, that's the very, very beginning, like preschool level step, is to understand all about health and to learn how to get it back. From that platform, you can use your own consciousness and focus to start getting back in touch with yourself, and that brings in all of these other abilities. And some of the people on the show have given examples of little glimpses of that. Bill Bankston, I was talking about before, he's got a system called image cycling, and he's using it with his students very successfully for them to get things that they want in their lives. And he gives an example of, let's say you need a new car, and you make this image in your mind with the feeling of what it's like to be sitting in it or looking at it or whatever you want that makes it real. And you get a whole bunch of those, and then you start running them like a wheel in the background of your awareness, faster and faster, so that you can't consciously grab onto it at all. It's a blur. And what he's finding is it starts happening in the lives of the students, which is very interesting. And the reason I say that he's doing this in a real scientific way is that even people that don't believe in it, it works for them too, which is really interesting. So his system is a little bit similar to our discussion of tuning to frequencies. And what I've been having a lot of discussions about that during the week this week with various people. And what we come back to is that all possible frequencies are always broadcasting all the time. And they're right where you are. You don't have to find them. But you do have to become aware of this faculty that you've got of tuning. And I wish I had another analogy, but I keep coming back to this dark room frequency and dark room experience, where if you're standing in a pitch black environment and there's somebody standing near you, you can feel their presence. And it's not through your regular five senses. So we have other abilities and senses like that, and we have the ability to tune to whatever frequency we want. So we can decide what it is. And if it's healing, for example, then we get a grasp of what that would feel like to have this, whatever image works for you, this beautiful inflow of golden light or whatever you want. That's not silly. When you actually imagine that, the word imagine comes from imagio, means I create. But it's not just saying it. It's not what you call affirmation. In a lot of systems have been sold on the old cassette tapes before the CDs came in. And I remember some of the famous people who did that, and it was always about like how to get rich or something that you want. And you end up just repeating with the tape that you are rich, all these things are already happening. But the problem is, and the reason that doesn't work for most people, and didn't, is because they were repeating that along with the tape. And underneath, they used to have tapes before CDs. I know some of you may not know that, but there were very different ways of recording things. I remember wire recorders in the early 50s when you had a spool that looked like fishing line, except it was silver metal, and it had a recording on it. It was really neat. I got to play with one that belonged to my grandmother. But anyway, sorry for the digression, but when you're listening to this tape, that you repeat along with it and say that you have something that you want, the problem is that underneath that, your emotions and your deeper thoughts are tied to something opposite. So what you're thinking about doesn't happen. But that doesn't mean that the theory is wrong. And, you know, Bill Bankston and other people have proven this really well. So what I'm saying is if there's a certain frequency you want, harmony in some form, you know, healing or harmony in a relationship or something like that, you have to get a feeling for what that's like. And then allow that to just flow into you and feel, just kind of scan for where it's coming from. And eventually you get good at this. And we move toward harmony and healing and universal solutions. So instead of saying, boy, I really want a new car, and focusing on that, you start to realize, whoa, what if I didn't restrict it to the new car? Or even Bill Bankston's list of 20 things. What if I just opened to the frequency of everything being harmonized? And an example of that is in your body, you've got, depending on what authority you're talking to, somewhere between 20 and 100 trillion cells. And that's just the cells. On the smaller components are even more numerous than that. And they are all working in perfect harmony in the body, or at least they're designed to be able to do that. And that means there's a force that's flowing through you. That's why you're alive in the body. And it's been there since you were developing from a single cell in your mother. Those cells duplications don't happen unless you're there directing it. So if that force is capable of orchestrating like a conductor in this vast symphony, all those things happening in harmony, why don't we just let it happen? Why don't we invite it and scan for that frequency? Because it's the most beautiful. It includes everything. And if you need a new car, the new car is going to be in there, but so is all the things that you don't even think of that you need. So it's just an idea to play with. And when we first get in touch with that, our mind is playing programs that are full of fear, and what if this doesn't happen, or what if this does happen, or, you know, this person probably doesn't like me, or I have this contention or fighting is going on, and there's emotion that goes with these pictures. So mind, it turns out, is a big factor in healing and in achieving any kind of self-awareness. And when I say awareness and consciousness, I have to clarify that I don't mean like being able to recite a list of 25 problems in the world. That's not awareness. That's knowing a list of problems. Awareness, as I'm using it, is a much deeper term. And to get any of it, you have to get past mind. And science doesn't even know what mind is, really. Science in its current kind of, you know, archaic form. But the old yogis ran into this and they said, whoa, there are negative thoughts that are creating all this hatred and division and self-hatred and all this garbage. They're all coming from mind. And so they tried to overcome mind by force. And in spite of temporary victories that seemed like they were getting the upper hand, they ended up losing because they're fighting mind with mind. Mind is not a temporary being. Mind is something created by consciousness in order to deal with the physical world, in order to have an experience here. We needed it. So we projected it. And it got its own awareness. And it's functioning as a 2-year-old kid right now, and that's its personality. And it's been trying to get our attention, because we're the parent of the mind, since before we were born, and we've been obliviously ignoring it. And it's getting really frustrated by now and tearing up the house trying to get our attention. And we've been talking about this over the last few weeks. If you make peace with the mind and a normal, healthy parent-child relationship, you just got a child that's going to help you do what people would call miraculous things. Because mind, from our point of view, is mostly subconscious. And the psychologists say, wow, that's vast power. But we only use 1% or whatever, probably less. But it's not subconscious to mind. They don't know about the existence of mind as a self-aware being, but you do. So if you can make or reestablish a relationship with mind, right now you wouldn't even believe what that's going to make it possible for you to do. And since my ulterior motive is to have your life be a lot more satisfying, but beyond that, to have the world come back to sanity and harmony, I would personally really like it if you become part of the group that's going to make this happen, even if nobody ever knows, and they just see the result. So the other thing is to reestablish the relationship with your other abandoned kids. See, you've abandoned 2 children that you didn't even know about, and the other one is your body, which science considers, a piece of matter, piece of meat with a bunch of atoms spinning around in harmony because they happen to line up correctly by some kind of good fortune, or I don't know what, but it's not really like that. It's all consciousness. So if you really look at one cell and you're not brainwashed by higher education, you can see that that cell is operating like an independent being. It's sleeping and eating and reproducing and fighting and resting and looking for food and all the stuff that an independent being does. Just because it's a little smaller than a whole person should not make us assume that it's not fully conscious, because it is. And when you realize it is, all kinds of potential opportunities for you open up, because every cell is conscious by itself. Every part of the body has its own consciousness. The body as a whole has its own consciousness. And they've all been looking to you as the conductor of the orchestra to try to open up this constant normal communication. And when you have that again, which you can get instantaneously information of a depth that can never come out of a medical test. And again, I'm not giving medical advice of any kind. I'm just letting you know you've got some interesting potential. And the body is alive and self-aware, but it has a different personality than the mind. It's more stoic and, kind of a little bit more grown-up, but like an older kid. And it's been ignored for its whole life, for your whole life. But it's carried on the best it could, and it's been inventive. It's taken toxic residues and stored them in places around your body, hoping that at some point you're going to do things that allow it to get rid of those poisons. And when you start studying fasting and live food diets and things like that, that's how you cooperate with the body. And it finally gets a chance to take out those poisons, and you eliminate the cause of future diseases and aging, which is quite useful. So I'm just here not as an authority on any of this stuff whatsoever. I'm just sharing experiences which apparently are kind of unusual and worth sharing with the people that want to know in health and consciousness. And in case they can help you in any way, that's the only point, other than the ulterior motive of trying to make a contribution to the outside world so we have a better time in the future. And I was staying invisible for my whole life because I really personally prefer never to be seen or known by the outside world at all. But when I was asked to do the radio show, it was obvious that I had to do that. And about that same time, I was shown that I'm supposed to build and run a school. I got the directions and the details of that over about a 5-year period. And there are a few different ways it could be put together, but we have enough detail now that it could be started tomorrow if the money were there. And the idea of the school, it's not an accredited school, okay, because that would destroy it right away. It's a real school, so that people would see and experience just even a tiny glimpse of their normal state. Nothing really amazing or anything. I mean, it is amazing, but it's supposed to be our everyday normal existence where we wouldn't believe, most of us, that how small of a percentage of our consciousness we're using. And then once they learned that at the school, they could go home and continue it, because it's a lifelong study and beyond. And you get back your health and energy at normal levels that are long forgotten. And then you start working more and more on the inside. And then you get to help positively terraform the Earth's energy and atmosphere back from the mess that's been made to supporting normal life again, for the benefit of all the people that are set to come here. And some people have been wanting to know a little bit more about this school. It's also kind of like a retreat, because people would come there probably for 2 or 3 weeks at a time. We've been talking a lot about what length of time it should be, but it has to be long enough so that you don't just get a glimpse of what your life could be like. You experience it for a while and start to reprogram. Like, Gabriel Cousens, who's been on the show a lot, Dr. Cousens, does retreats for people who want to cure their diabetes. And they're learning a new lifestyle in order to do that, and it works. It's amazing. I think it's called 30 Days Raw or something. It's a free video on YouTube that you might like. What really happened with some of his patients going. So I think the 3-week idea is good. Another example of that is there's a place in Portugal that takes people who have all kinds of health and life problems and puts them on juice fasts. And there's a movie showing what happened to a group of people that went through that, and it's called Super Juice Me, SuperJuiceme. It's really good. It's a very emotional type movie. They chose 8 people when they were just starting this retreat in Portugal that's called Juicy Oasis. It's on the internet too. And they took those 8 people and they put them on juice only for like a month. And it's an in-depth documentary of what each one of them experienced. And, juice fasts are not something that you have to pay a lot of money for necessarily. I mean, it's a really good idea to get supervision from somebody who's very experienced, but you can do at least a little bit of it at home yourself for nothing. It can be very beneficial if you do it right. Of course, immediately ask your medical doctor, and they'll tell you that it's crazy and you just need more drugs, of course. And, make sure that you don't listen to any crazy people like me. But I'm just telling you the crazy version, that I've used this for decades, and it's very powerful. So the school would be physically on several hundred acres, maybe 1,000 or a little over, probably in Arizona at this point. In fact, we're looking at potential sites for it now. There are some real estate people who are really tuned into that and looking for us and letting us know what they come up with. Arizona, because for several reasons, we want a place where there's at least a memory of individual freedom. And though I really love California and some other places, California has the most berserk government right now, where they're doing all this forced vaccination of kids, and there are a lot of other things that they're kind of being the vanguard of totalitarianism for the other states to follow. And so that's not ideal, and it's also more polluted. Unfortunately, the agriculture in California is on such great, soil and water circumstances and stuff. They've just poured the chemical fertilizer and the pesticide and the GMOs in there. And even though we need good soil for the location where the school will be, we can't be in the middle of an ag area because of the condition that most of those are in now. And we can't be next door to GMOs that, as the corrupt people in the USDA have said, everybody should coexist and we should have wonderful freedom for some people to do GMO and some people organic. That's complete nonsense, because the only thing you really have the innate right to be free to do is what doesn't expand out from you and hurt everybody else. And GMOs anywhere on the planet is like smoking in a locked room with 100 other people, or 7 billion other people, as the case may be. It's completely immoral, and it should never be allowed. So the fact that it's not only allowed but promoted by our government lets you know what they're doing. So we have to be more secluded for the school. We're looking at places that are far off the grid, no power, because we'll generate our own. And it doesn't have to be fantastic soil like the Central Valley of California, but it has to be not totally poisoned, not solid rock, which a lot of areas in Arizona are. The other reason that I'm thinking of Arizona is I think that the dry environment is good for people that are trying to get their health back. And if you can combine that with abundant underground water and surface water, of which there are places like that in Arizona that have that, they're just rare, but they do exist. And soil is good enough to work with, and then we'll bring it back to a state of fertility similar to right after the last ice age, when there was lots of rock dust still in the soil. And that's another huge area that I find really interesting, because that's one way to really help the climate stability and the quality of the food being grown is with rock dust, and it's an almost completely lost field of knowledge. So we're going to be showing how to create it and use it on the land. And also, I have a lot of people that would like to help with energy that is way beyond, technologies way beyond solar and wind. But the little detail that you have to take account of if you're going to do that is the energy policy of the U.S. and most of the world is that anybody who tries to expose free and clean energy technologies, you just kill them. That is a problem. And just like Stan Meyer and so many others have been killed by government agents, and they're ready to kill anybody else that tries to expose that. So we've got a taboo on real energy production technology. What do you call it? The technology for moving around in vehicles and aircraft and things. That real technology, propulsion, I wanted to say, that's also forbidden. Real health information is forbidden. Only crazy people, like on this show, can talk about it, as long as it's understood to be ridiculous and you have to go to your doctor immediately and all that. So we're looking for ways that we can safely do that, and I think we're going to find it. And there are technologies that can do amazing things. And what the real wisest inventors of technology all know is that the human being is beyond any artificial technology that is invented. Even the higher civilizations that are using interplanetary vehicles and stuff right now, human potential is way beyond that and doesn't need machines. So we're going to be working on primarily opening up the consciousness of every single person, because everybody listening to the show, everybody who's not listening to the show, you're such an amazing, unlimited being because of where you came from, that, there's little tiny bits of clues left in scriptures of all these different religions, greater things than these shall you do, and all this stuff. There's a reason for that, and it's because of who you are. And it makes no sense if you think that you're this limited, low intelligence, non-creative being that government wants you to think. But the school, although it will teach natural laws and how to use them to not worry about health issues anymore, the main lesson behind that is reconnect to your full awareness. There won't be any Wi-Fi. There will be a satellite connection for essential internet, but no Wi-Fi generated on the site at all. There will be models and animals on site, grazing animals. There has to be room for them to have fresh grass and things like that. There a new model of dairy production, not because I want things to be complex. If it could be done with just fruit or vegan food, that would be great. But I've experimented with that for a really long time, and raw milk is an incredible food when it's produced right. But I want to show that it can be produced without abusing or hurting or killing the animals at all. And I don't think that's being done on Earth right now. It was a long time ago, but it's not now. So I want to bring that back. Fiber production, wool, alpaca wool, probably llamas for different kinds of fiber, things like that. And all the old crafts and arts that are being lost and have been lost, I want them back. And all the super advanced low-tech technologies, not just organic food growing with the rock dust and all that, and without digging and the interesting stuff of that kind, but also making organic clothing, which is an industry that really needs to come back, because we're all walking around wearing glyphosate patches all day, which is not brilliant. And right now, since there's almost no organic clothing being produced, it tends to cost 10 times as much as the other clothes, and it's really hard to afford it for most people. So we need to see a lot of these small businesses set up that do that. Making money by doing something good is, I think, a really good idea. And make as much money as you can, but do it by serving, the world and the other people and yourself. So we're going to bring back those crafts, making shoes, body care that doesn't poison you, makeup, and we'll probably sell those at the school and show people how to get into that kind of stuff, pottery and glass and all of these things. And then the really old technologies, like using crystals to generate lights without having them connected to electricity. Those things are pretty interesting, and they were used thousands of years ago. So we're going to get those things back, and in the process, figure out how to do that and stay alive. And I'm pretty sure at this point that we'll be helped to do that, because these things are needed, and there are others besides just us that care about that. So we're going to get a lot of help. But, what it boils down to is sharing a whole different paradigm of learning and understanding. It's based on once you have learned and applied healing to your own body, and you have made the relationship with your mind and body good again, then you get something called direct perception. You'll glance at a person and know what they're thinking. All this knowledge will come to you that you don't know how you got it. And that's normal. Okay, we just forgot, so it seems weird, but it's not weird. And anybody who gets into that state can then help heal the atmosphere, tune into the healing and harmony frequency, which takes care of pretty much everything, and you don't have to enumerate everything that you want fixed. It's just like in the body, that energy is healing and maintaining trillions of cells at once without your having to do it. You just have to. It's like you're the CEO of a company that has to set the policy, and you set the policy of harmony, love, unlimited, unconditional love, and things like that. And then the unseen force that has kept you alive from the beginning takes care of the details, and there are a lot of details, but it's no effort for that force because it's in everything. So the thing about the school, and the reason you don't see it being built today is, well, the underlying reason is different, but on the surface the reason is because it's expensive. And to do it the way that I was shown that it should be done is probably a budget around $25 million or so. And, we're just barely hanging on to the, even doing the radio show right now, which has low expenses. So we don't exactly have an extra $25 million, but there are people that do, and that have much more than that. But the question is, do they have any interest in this kind of thing? And I don't know. So we're kind of reaching out to different sources of funding that might be safe. The ones that may come in now to keep our current work going are deeply appreciated if they do, and they're really needed, but they're not on the scale that it will take to also do the school. So the question is, okay, let's say we get a few people supporting us, not the ones who are struggling for paying your bills. Okay, do not send us donations if you're having a hard time. Please take care of yourself instead. But the people who have discretionary funds, if they want to keep us going, keep us on the air, and keep all this research going, what do we do right now when we don't have the money for the bigger picture? I've tried to raise some money through some individual consulting, but my time is so limited. Although that money goes direct to the nonprofit, it's very meager, and that's really not enough. So what do we do in the meantime that could reach more people and doesn't need the big source of funds to start? And I was talking to Dara Berger about this. And if you read the show announcement for tomorrow night, Dara Berger is incredible. I mean, I think you'd really want to hear it. She wrote a book, How to Prevent Autism, and you're not supposed to write books about that. Everybody knows it's incurable, and anybody who says it is curable is crazy, and needs to be stopped immediately. And also, it's very clear that it's caused by vaccines, and aggravated by thousands of other poisons that have been intentionally released into our environment. So she talks openly about that, and her format is interviewing some really brilliant doctors and other health type people about their view on how to prevent it the best, how to get away from all the poison stuff. And so I was just talking to her about, what do we do now when we don't have the money at the moment for the school, although hopefully it comes in right away, tomorrow or something like that. That's great. But in the meantime, I'm not counting on that. I was telling her, well, what do you think about the idea of starting some workshops now, like what the school would be, but without the school? And so the question, she thought that was great, and the question was, how do you do it? How do you get this information to people on a level that will totally transform their lives by immersion? If they would have stayed at the school for 3 weeks, what if they stayed at a workshop for 3 weeks, eat absolutely nothing except the food that is geared toward producing this kind of health change, and learn about all these other things and practice doing them nonstop for 3 weeks? How would that be? And who should come, to a workshop like that? And she said, well, before I asked her opinion, I had gotten other people that had been leading groups of electrosensitive people, the people that are starting to really feel suffering from the Wi-Fi and the 5G and all this stuff coming up. And I thought they'd be great because the medical industry doesn't realize that they're a potential gold mine. They just tell them they're all crazy. And so they're free to do what they want. Whereas if you look at like cancer patients, for example, and I apologize for saying that word publicly. I know we're never supposed to do that, but it's for a good cause, and you'll see that. Those people, as soon as they're diagnosed with cancer, the doctors jump on them and say, for your own good, you have to start this treatment tonight. You have to get radiation and surgery and chemotherapy immediately. And if you waste time thinking about alternatives, you're committing suicide, hurting your family, and destroying the world, or you're a terrible person. So most people are so terrified they jump into that treatment immediately. And if you try to suggest anything natural, because lots and lots of people have successfully used natural treatments to do that, you're seen as a major criminal and dealt with accordingly. So with the electrosensitive people, they're not a target yet of the medical industry. So it's easier to talk to them. But Dara's response was, no, the parents and kids who are autistic, they need it right away. So you should have some sessions for them. And they're not all receptive, but the ones that are really open to changing their lifestyle and their food, if it'll help their kids, they really would actually do it. Even they do the work. Because it's not just supposed to be like an entertainment workshop, although we may have to officially call it that. But in other words, we don't want the people to just have a great time and then forget it and go right back to fast food. That's a waste of time, I think. We want only the people that are ready to completely transform their experience, their consciousness, their awareness, and what they do all day and what they eat and how they sleep and the whole thing, so that they can start being a much bigger contributor to the future of the world. This is what we're after. So she said the autistic kids and parents would be good to come to those workshops. But the underlying thing that you guys probably know is the same things that we would teach them work for everybody else. And this thing of having a special disease diagnosed, I agree with Dr. Morse, that's just a complete distraction. Either the body's working harmoniously or it's not. And if it's not, it needs support. And if it gets the support, then it knows what to fix, and it fixes it no matter what Latin word is tied to a diagnosis. So the same thing works on everybody, and if they're willing to do what's required, and if not too much damage has already been done by the medical industry or other exposures that they've had. So some groups are too controlled and afraid, like what we talked about, and some are not. And we have the feeling that there are some that are receptive and would value this. So the organizational work is starting now. Designing the curriculum for the 3 weeks is underway. Food arrangements are already being made with a professional catering company that does raw organic food in a really attractive manner that people will like. The venue arrangements are being made right now, considering various retreat sites and other details, the exact length, what it has to cost, because what I've got to figure out is if we're going to have help from a company supplying the food and company supplying the venue because the school doesn't exist physically yet and all that, those are base costs that have to be covered. And then on top of that, the nonprofit Lost Arts Research Institute should make something, because the idea is for it to be able to expand these programs. But at the same time, we don't want money to be a reason that people can't come. And I know charging anything will keep some people from coming, but it's like with the school, what we had the idea of is that if we get enough high-end clients that pay for everything, then some percentage of that money could be taken out for a scholarship program that can let at least some people who can't afford it come anyway. And something similar could probably be done with the workshops. So I want to see if this is something that's supposed to happen. Either it is or it isn't. With the consulting, what was really obvious about it is that I was working privately with a small number of people. I still am. And it's totally transforming their lives, and they're getting over really difficult situations. That's great. But it's not the kind of volume thing that can really, get the project going. It's not going to produce anywhere near enough money for that, and I don't have the time to do more than a few people. But with the workshop, we could have a fairly good-sized number all at once, and we could be reaching hundreds, if not thousands of people in a fairly short time that way, and a lot of lives could get changed. And there, according to, I think, my discussion with Dara, we were saying 1 million kids, or so have been damaged by the vaccines, just in America, or more, probably more. It's hard to tell because most don't get reported. And this is a group that deserves to have something done for them. So we'll just have to do it carefully, because at the higher levels, when they see what we're doing, they'll realize that we're going right to the core of where the problem is in the world and in people's lives, and they're not going to like that. But my idea is not to see them as enemies. I want to offer them the same kind of help we offer anybody else. And my hope is that people within the power structure, in certain cases, might in some way be helped by this. And then from their position of power, they could actually become good allies. So that's part of the vision. I hope that makes sense. Dara's going to be on tomorrow night. I haven't mentioned the phone number. I will talk to a few people if anybody wants to call. 657-383-1002, 657-383-1002. If anybody has an interest that they'd like to talk about, or what's going on for them or in their lives, or any of these things that we've been talking about, we have a little bit of time that we'll use for that if anybody's interested. But I wanted to let you know before I forget that Dara is on tomorrow night. She's already been telling all the people in her networks about the show. It's going to be really incredible, and I think that you'll like it. Oh, the other thing is, which might turn out to be the show right after Dara, is remember Michelle Ford? She's the lady who founded Vaccine Injury Awareness League, VILE, and you can just type in Vaccine Injury Awareness League into a search engine, and you'll find out about her organization. But she's in Italy right now. She called right before she left and told us what she was doing. And the reason she's in Italy until Monday, just for a couple days, is that the European governments are obviously being targeted by the medical drug dealers now. And, the pharmaceutical experts. And being told, look, you've really got to step up the forced vaccination thing, and it's got to reach a lot more people. The kids are the first victims because they're already trapped in public schools and private schools, which are under government surveillance all the time. But those are the easiest victims to pick up. So they do the kids first, but they all definitely intend to use forced vaccination on all the adults too. And this is one reason that they want to move toward what's called a cashless society. Because as soon as you have a cashless society that gullible individuals support because they think it's safer, right? You have this picture that's given to you by the government that if you walk around with any cash, somebody's going to steal it. And if it's all virtual and digital, then you're totally secure and safe. But the little problem with that is as soon as it's a cashless society, anything you do that doesn't please the government, they just turn off your cash. Not your cash, but your credits. And you can't buy food. And they figure that'll make everybody come to their senses and obey everything quite quickly. So the kids are only step one. These people are not very nice, and they have the idea of doing that. But the forced vaccination, I know it's only one of like 20 major assaults going on at the same time, but it's an important one, and it's accelerating right now. And in Italy, they have decided for the best interest of the kids, they would multiply, I think, the required number of shots by 4, from 3 to 12 or something like that, or 4 to 12. And so people are protesting in the streets in Rome and Bologna, where Michelle went to take part, and other places in Italy. And, if it's like America, the government won't care at all what the people want. They're engineering total disaster. But at some point, people are going to have to realize that the horrible nature of what's being planned, they need to do anything they can to help that not happen. And it's not even a world worth living in that the rulers are creating. We're not going to like it, and it's really not going to be survivable anyway. So she's over there trying to encourage the Italian people to at least let the government know that you think they're, basically suggesting mass murder, because everybody knows that quite a few kids, a certain percentage of them will die from these shots. And a bigger percentage will get really bad diseases and have their lives destroyed. So that's just a given. And the vaccine representatives impressed the government so much that they figured, well, that's insignificant, because even though a lot of people die and get injured, they're still totally safe and effective. And the number of people that die and get injured is nothing compared to saving the whole country from extermination by measles or whatever they're saving them from. And, they've shown in great detail, Suzanne Humphrey's book, Dissolving Illusions, which is a great book, talks about this stupid thing with measles. Measles doesn't kill you as a rule. It doesn't make you very sick even, as long as you're not living in sewage and a few things like that. And the history when measles was killing people, and the places it does now, are very unusual environments of that kind. And it's not really an issue. And it's certainly not prevented by vaccines, because in Disneyland, what they called the big outbreak, they thought that was a dramatic word they'd use to say a few people got measles. That was mostly caused by people who were vaccinated for measles. I mean, it's so stupid that they think that because these guys are, wearing white coats and things, that everybody will believe them. But now they're realizing more and more people don't believe them, and they're going directly to the government to say, well, just force the people. Why waste time discussing it? Make it illegal to resist. So this is happening in Italy, where Michelle is meeting. The day's over in Italy, but today was the day with the big event in the city where she was. And then France, who apparently just got a completely berserk leader put in power, Macron, has declared a state of emergency, said that he's going to rule like the god Zeus, which I think is not a very representative type of government, and unless you're just representing Zeus, I guess. But that's what he's going to do, and he thought one of the best things to do would be to force everybody to have all kinds of vaccines, including adults. And so he's working on that right now, and it's planned to spread worldwide. But it's just an example of the kind of program that's being put in force. Vaccines is one, the constant spraying in the air is another one. The GMO, it's not just the GMO food, the chemical agriculture, chemical fertilizers growing food is a total disaster because the chemical fertilizer destabilizes the soil bacteria just like drugs do in your gut, because the soil is this huge universe of delicately balanced microlife. It's supposed to be. And when you dump water-soluble fertilizers in there that upset the whole balance of chemistry, then the food that grows on that soil is all out of balance, and then the insects and disease come in to destroy that food because it's not supposed to be there. It's a mess. And that is what makes it look like pesticides are necessary. It's a total sophisticated scam. So all these things are going on. It's not just the vaccines. And, ultimately, either a solution is going to be found or the planet is not going to support life. And as far as the agenda of the rulers is concerned, it's option 2, no normal life. And they're working as fast as they can on it. It's not a technical thing that they can't figure out how to do right. It's not they're trying to save the planet from global warming, so that nobody notices it's getting hotter. They want everybody to think it's getting hotter because then they'll say, okay, we need geoengineering everywhere. It's a very simple plan. And they're already teaching geoengineering in universities all over the world. You can get a lifelong certificate of different kinds in higher education in geoengineering right now, at the same time as they're saying they're not really doing it. So they're just assuming that, our intelligence level is so low that we'll accept things that are totally contradictory and make no sense. And so far we're proving that they're correct in that assumption. I have to say one more thing, and then we'll take a couple of calls. 657-383-1002. The one thing I wanted to say is, we had some shows with Dr. Bill Warner recently, about one of the main attacks against culture and society has been Islam. It's perfect for what the global rulers want because it says everybody except Muslims has to be killed. It's not just argument or a theory. It says that right in the scriptures. Muhammad said that's the point. World peace through killing everybody who you might be fighting with, except the ones, there are some of them you can make into slaves and sex slaves and stuff like that. That would be fine. But most of them have to be killed. And so I was thinking, wait, I don't think this is a very good idea to have, and the Muslims are having, as a society, they're having kids at a rapid rate, which is part of the jihad to take over the world. Because if you have a bigger population, you can do it faster. The same reason for mass rapes in Scandinavia and stuff like that. But I thought, wait, I know some of the Muslim people, and they're great people. They're not like that. So maybe something could be arranged, like a Declaration of Independence, similar to what we had on July 4th, where Muslims would sign something that said, God doesn't hate anybody, and think that all the wrong religion people should be killed. That's nonsense. That's a human idea, and we're going to declare our independence from any political or religious leaders that try to make us into murderers. But I talked to some of the famous apostates about this idea that have actually succeeded in escaping from Islam, and they're still alive, in spite of the fact that the imams say they should all be killed. And they said, well, number one, if you say that, it's just going to make you an enemy of 1 billion and point something people. But the more important thing is that there are already groups offering the Muslim people a way to declare that they're free of all that. And basically what they're doing is they're suggesting apostasy, which is punishable by death. And so there aren't very many Muslims willing to do that. And she said, the one I was talking to, that you really should just keep it open on your show. It's like the idea is that everybody being divided by what religion they are is completely ridiculous. That people are made out of pure spirit. That's how they were originally made, and they took on physical form later to have certain experiences, which we're doing now. But we're not supposed to be hating each other and, think that everybody who doesn't have our belief system is an alien that has to be killed. That's a divide and conquer strategy of the rulers, and I don't think we should go along with it. But I'll just continue doing that, and as we expand, we're completely receptive to people inside and outside any religion or no religion, because the same potential is inside everybody, and we just want to be able to share that. So anyway, I don't think I'll publish the declaration because it might get some people killed, but the idea will keep out there that it reminds me of, the city council had a meeting where I live. I don't usually go to that. I'm usually really busy with other stuff, but I went because it was about the 5G system coming to our town and putting in these transmitters everywhere, which are disastrous for people's health and for insects and bees and animals and all this stuff. It's totally terrible. And the mentality of the city council when I went to that meeting was amazing. It's like they assume that no matter what law is made, even if it says you have to kill yourself or you have to kill your kids or destroy the environment or whatever, if it's a law, well, of course you have to obey it. And so, I'm looking at the idea of how America was started, in any place where people want to be free and in touch with their origin and who they really are. They always say, yeah, we want law and order because it keeps things nice and harmonious, but any government that starts overstepping their legitimate bounds from the consent of the governed, such as the government that was in force over the colonies originally, it's the duty of the people under that government to change it to something else. So, but the people in the city council were, just like, we have no power. There's nothing we can do. The state already said we can't object to anything of this stuff. The federal government said you can't bring up environmental damage or anything from the transmitters. That's all illegitimate. But somebody from, with a little bit more conscious character, like from the beginning of the country of the U.S., would have said, what? Who are you people? This is not, we don't have to just lie here and commit suicide or be murdered. That's not part of the deal with America. And really, it's not part of the deal with any country, because the rights don't come from government and everybody's got them from God. It doesn't matter whether you believe in them or not, they belong to you. So it's a mentality. Again, it comes right back to the same ultimate question of getting back our self-awareness and then living as something different after that. So anyway, sorry for the rambling, and I know it went on for a long time, but we'll see if anybody wants to talk a little bit. Dee's been holding for a while, and I'm curious what's going on with her. Dee in California. How are you, Dee? And hope you're having a nice weekend so far.
Hello, Richard. Yeah, it's actually been a really inspiring whole week.
Good. I know you were having some difficulties last week when you called in.
Yeah, and actually, you're like a prophet, because you said that sounded to you like it probably was a jumping up to another level of some sort, some kind of a...
Yeah, sort of like graduation ceremony or something like that.
Yeah, and I think that was right on the spot, because that's what happened.
So how did it unfold at that point from when you told us last week?
It was amazing leap. I mean, it was more like a quantum leap than just another... I might have skipped a grade, I don't know, but... I guess I'll find out.
Sounds wonderful.
It is.
Well, for people that weren't here last week, tell them what the problem was, what was going on.
Oh, wow. I've been so concentrated on this week, I don't even remember.
I know. Well, you said there was a real difficulty with some person that was intruding, and you were wondering whether you could just kick them out of your life or, what to do with them without starting a big fight.
Oh, yeah. Well, that all just vanished when I started getting my mind focused on what we've been talking about all through all these shows, really getting it. And Good. I think what happened was having difficulties springboarded me into really getting it. And once I started, in my mind going through the right way to look at things instead of the wrong way, all the other stuff just vanished.
Yeah, isn't that interesting when it looks like the physical stuff could never be affected by what you do inside? And it's not really like that. No,
I'm just amazed at the amount of understanding that just sort of came on one big jolt this week. I mean, it's come in through like one epiphany after another, but the all-in-all effect has been a huge leap. If I look at it,
it's like almost a different lifetime after a while.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like now I'm realizing that I was born with everything that I needed to successfully navigate my whole life. Everything was provided. I don't have to, think I have to try to get this or gain that or, It's just already there, and I didn't really get that before because I hadn't really felt it before.
Yeah, what it makes you just amazed at is how completely blind and oblivious we've been for virtually our whole lives, walking around as if we had our eyes open when we didn't.
Yeah, and part of it is staying in the now. We've talked about that, but I didn't really understand it until, I went through whatever I just went through.
Yeah. So.
And then the other thing is.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, you always keep saying the leaders or the people that you've been discussing as the rulers, or anybody that's a bully or anybody that's trying to force something on somebody, they are the ones who are in need more than the supposed victim.
They're totally living, entrapped in fear.
Right. So
if you don't have fear, you don't have to be nasty like that.
Right. So fear is key. And once I realized that I don't have to fear what's going on because they're way worse off than I am. So once I did that and was able to turn it around to where I decided to donate my nurturing to them instead of just being some kind of a meal or a victim, it absolutely just was like a magic key. And like you said, there's no bad stuff hanging around once you are tuned into the good stuff.
Yeah, it's really almost magnetic. That's why like attracts like. And the characters that are in this play that's your life are only there because they're responding to what you're transmitting. And as soon as you change the transmission, they can't be there unless they change also. And I just, also, listening to what you're saying, I get reminded, what's happening in Hollywood and all that. You know what an archetype is? It's like a hero model, that like Superman that everybody's supposed to look up to, or Wonder Woman or whatever. The male and the female heroes that we're shown all the time are the ones that can shoot the fastest, kill the most people. They're very unstable and they can, get mad at you and kill you in a second for insulting them. And these are supposed to be the heroes, right? And what that means is that you never get in touch with the real power that you've got, which has nothing to do with killing everybody. It's harmony. It's like what you're talking about.
Yeah. Well, I experienced like a paradigm shift almost where now, like you keep saying, you got to look inward, you can't look outward, you can't look outward. And I keep thinking, how do you do that? And I didn't know till now. Now I'm seeing the inward a whole lot, and the outward just vanished. I'm not looking to other people for my strength. I'm looking to myself for all my strengths because, like I said, they just come with the package, and I didn't get that before.
So what made you get it? I mean, could you give any clues to people that are wondering what are you talking about and how can they use it?
I guess the best way to nutshell it would be I got really frustrated, and I did cuss and use that colorful language or whatever. It felt like I was backed into a impossible corner, and I just guess my mother bear instinct came out, and when it did that, it wasn't because I wanted to attack or hurt anybody. It was because I was forced into defending myself is what I felt like. That was my impression anyways. And when I faced doing, see, I don't like to get angry ever. And so when I faced having to do that, it just sort of made me realize that I don't like this situation. I don't ever want to have to stay very long in this kind of a feeling. And I guess it just sort of triggered something inside of me that said, because all last few weeks, you know, I've been concentrating on loving and nurturing and caring. And so when I applied that to this situation, I think that was the difference. So I just realized all of a sudden that these are people too, and I know we've discussed it, but they are the most needy. So all of a sudden I remembered that it's not just the easy ones, it's the most needy that need us. And I want to be needed, and I want to donate my usefulness. And then I realized that's exactly the people that I'm here to help.
Exactly. It's not only the starving kids that need your help.
Right. Well, they are starving.
Sometimes it's the really bad, it's the really aggressive bad guys that are sometimes, I mean, I know it sounds crazy, but I'm agreeing with you that sometimes those are the ones that most urgently need it. And if you're of any help to them, indirectly, it really helps the other people because they don't have the same interaction with their victims that way. It starts to change.
Well, so, I mean, what you just said, they're starving, you know, they're not starving kids, but they are starving because they're starving for love.
Exactly.
If they're living in a fear state that's causing them to strike out, that means they're starving for love.
Yeah, I mean, their real form would probably be some super emaciated, you know, being. And if you really could see what they look like.
Yeah, so what the line that came to me, I mean, I've studied the Bible, and the line that came to me is, feed my sheep. And so all of a sudden I realized they are the sheep that are coming to me to be fed.
That's right, they're all the sheep.
Yeah.
Because underneath the costume is the same kind of being in every case. And it's not obvious, but it's what you eventually find out. It kind of changes your opinion of a lot of things.
It flip-flopped me around, and so so instead of being on the defensive, I immediately flipped into a nurture mode and like a mothering mode, and that, I think, is what did it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's no fun to have a fight with somebody who's being nice to you.
Yeah, and the other things that came to me was that being in the now is the reward. I don't have to look forward to some future reward ever. Like, I know you've preached this before, too, and I never got it till now, but being in the now is the reward. I don't have to look to the future at all.
Well, it's the reason for looking to the future is that eventually you want to be in that state, and you could just be in that state directly.
Constantly, meaning, because I'm already there.
without having anything else required to get you there.
Exactly, like I'm already there.
Yeah, you always were. You just had your eyes closed.
Right. That's why when I realized I came with the whole package, that means I do already have everything I need, and I am already there. I always have been, and so I don't even have to worry about the finances anymore.
No, and fear becomes impossible if you get into that state.
Yeah, it feels really good.
You're too relaxed to get all scared of anything, really.
Yeah. And then another thing I was trying to remember, to the beauty of life, because my whole worldview is changed. I'm not looking at it as a have to. I'm looking at it as a get to, like it's a real fun place to be, and I get to do all these neat things, and I never looked at it that way before.
Yeah, if you start telling yourself, I have to do this, I have to do that, no, I have to do that, and in an hour I have to do that, the whole frequency of that attitude is completely different.
Yeah, that shifted completely around. All these shifts happen at the same time. I think that's why I think I skipped a grade, because I have to go through them one at a time.
Yeah, and there's no law that you have to take, you have to spend a year in each grade or anything like that. It's completely open.
Right. So I'm like constantly in this attitude of gratitude now because of those shifts, those completely turned around shifts.
Well, that gratitude thing is a big key, because if you start saying internally, thank you all the time, even for the things that are, that people would consider normally unpleasant, and you say thank you because I know you wouldn't let me have this experience unless there was a gift hiding in it somewhere. And that radically changes the whole thing too.
Well, I don't know for sure if I'm to that level grade yet, because right now, as I go through the negative stuff, like what I did last week, I wasn't really that grateful for it at the time.
No, but eventually you do figure that out, because you keep seeing what the results are, and it's not so bad.
Yeah, I think the more I do it, and I see through it now. So now it's all just like a big game or a big, costume. It doesn't.
It's also very malleable, and you're experiencing that you've got a major power position once you start playing with changing what you're holding inside.
Exactly.
If you just change that, you can wait to see what happens on the outside.
Yeah, I've noticed the power shift on the inside. I feel empowered on the inside now. Like I don't have to even ask, how I said last week I wanted to know how to get help, or I had to ask for help. Or I'm like, well, I don't even have to do that. If you think about it, it's already all there. I don't even have to.
Yeah. Once you see it, you don't have to have theories about it.
No. So it's strong. My strength within is like it is like a power source. Like it is a generator of love, really. Yeah. A love generator.
And you don't have to decide where you should be of the most use, because you're going to get shown. Every minute. If you just focus on the work that you're doing, then you're going to be dragged over to wherever you're supposed to be doing it. Or the people will be dragged to you. They'll just show up.
I've noticed that. And I also realized that the whole goal is to be like a little kid, right?
A lot of great teachers have said that. You have to become like a little kid. And it's really, I've been the slowest learner of anybody knowing what any of those things really meant. But there's a lot to that statement of becoming like a little kid. It's like, when your body is developing before you get born, there's this beautiful energy flowing through you that's taking care of everything. And you don't have anything to do, to figure out, to plan, to worry about, any of that. You just sit there or lie there, maybe with your head down or whatever position you're in, and you just get to experience that beautiful energy and consciousness flowing through you that is taking care of a billion different things in your cells at once with no stress or effort. And there's no reason that we couldn't, so what I was going to say is when the baby gets born, usually you can see some of that in their eyes, and that's what makes them look beautiful, is because they're just being, like you said, in the now, they're being themselves. They're not having accumulated all these things to worry about and think and make up as problems. There's no reason that frequency couldn't be allowed in all of our life now.
Yeah, it's like a carefree and happy land. You don't worry about where the bills are going to get paid when you're a kid. Your dad does that, or your mom, and you just go and run around and play with your friends and enjoy your life.
Yeah, that baby consciousness has a frequency, and that can be one of those frequencies that you tune to just by letting it in and inviting it, and you don't have to figure out the details at that point.
Yeah. Well,
you just don't want to let go.
Right. I've tried tuning in, and it's hard for me to tune in intentionally. I kind of just get myself realizing that I don't have to be afraid, and I don't have to this, and I don't have to that, and then it just sort of comes to me. But if I try to find it, I have a harder time.
Good. So you've got a clue of how to do it.
Well, yeah, if I look for it, it's kind of elusive. If I look for it, I don't find it as easily as if I do when it comes to me, when I just drop all the other stuff. So
what you're doing is you're rearranging kind of a little mini belief system about that thing in your mind. And when you say you're going to let it come to you, then the beliefs that were blocking it about you having to do it yourself and that you really couldn't, those are just gone. So it just comes in by itself.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, that's nice. I think that could be applied to anything. So it ends up where it's all stress-free and relaxed.
Right. I was trying to figure out why there's suffering and what is this long suffering that is supposed to be some wonderful thing. Why would suffering be wonderful at all? And so I was questioning that, and then the answers just started flowing in. And my take on the answer to that one was that it's really just patient anticipation for everybody to come to the same realization, or the orchestra you're talking about.
Yeah, the suffering is not something to aspire to as some great virtue, It's like suffering is a message that it's a kind of pain, and there's two kinds of pain. One is just getting used to something you're not used to, but it's good, like working out in the gym when you haven't been there for 20 years. There's pain when you just do good exercises. But there's another kind of pain when you're doing something that's hurting you. And so, those are both suffering, but one is helpful, but not to be all worried and tied up about it, just to go through it. The other one is a message to change something. And if you're picking that up, it's helpful.
Well, I started picking up that it wasn't for me, it was for everybody else. I needed the patience to be patient when I have to watch everybody suffer that doesn't get it yet. That is kind of what I was looking at. Yeah,
that's hard to relax into, but, just getting really upset about it doesn't seem to help them. If we're doing the kind of thing that you're talking about inside, then eventually it's contagious. And the resonance happens between you and them, and when they're ready and they've had enough of feeling terrible, which sometimes takes a long time, then they pick it up. So the more of it that you develop in yourself, that's the way that you help them, I think.
And then the patient part is easy.
Yeah, because you're in the present anyway. What's this thing about time?
Yeah, time is really not what you're led to believe.
No, thousands of years from now, it's still going to be the present.
And then I thought of a question to ask you. This came to me probably in the middle of the week. The question was, after trying on an experience for size and it didn't fit right, and it doesn't, or I've outgrown it, how do I overcome the residual effects of it? And then before I could even come to today to ask you it, the answers already came.
Yeah. So that's the best way, is if, really the answers are instantaneously always there, and they always have been. So, it's like what you said, what you've had with you all the time is amazing. It just hasn't been noticed.
So what the answer was a two-parter. It was ask for it to be removed, and then number 2, replace it with something better. And so when I was trying to figure out and apply that, I figured out a technique to do it more effectively.
So how did you do that?
So before I could put a good picture, you know how Bill Bankston was saying, you think of all these good pictures, and you've said that too, you keep a really good picture in front of you. Well, I was trying to do that, and I was having trouble doing it because the old picture was still there, and it was like putting a good picture on top of an old picture. So what came to my mind was, here's where my mind actually started helping me instead of hindering me.
Good. It can do that. It's got amazing abilities.
So what it came up with was put up a white screen. So I took it like a bigger than I don't have an oversized TV. I just have an old-fashioned one, but I made it bigger. Yeah. So it's a screen. It's like a movie screen, a big white movie screen. So I had to shut off the old film, and so just had the white screen sitting there for a few minutes. Yeah. And once it blanked out the old stuff with the white screen, then I was able to replace it with a better visual.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think it's perfect. I mean, it was obviously tailored exactly for what you needed. And the nice thing was, it's an example of all these answers that are just there and waiting right when you need them.
Yeah, so now if I have a problem with something bothering me that keeps appearing, all I have to do is white screen it out and then wait for the right thing to show up. Yeah, that sounds great. And it's just the limitations and the things that can't be solved and all that, they're only real limitations because at some level we believe they are. So your mind gets this little idea like the white screen or something that makes it think, oh, but if I do it this way, then it's okay to get rid of it. And as soon as that is understood, the old belief is gone. So the limitation is gone because it was never real anyway. Yeah, but I'm the projector runner, so I get to decide whether it goes or stays. Yeah, it sounds really good. So it's working. Should be inspiring everybody who is hearing you, because when you get to the bottom of it, everybody is working on variations of the same thing. It's just the degree of realizing that varies. Right, and I just realized it more, way more. Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's literally like the outside world completely changes when the inside world changes. Yeah, and we're so, we grew up in our culture to just focus on outside, that it's a whole different paradigm to look at the inside, and that's why it took me so long, I think, to finally get that. Yeah, same with me. I mean, one of my heroes when I was a little kid was Batman, and he's out there just trying to fix the world by beating up all the bad guys, and that's one of the archetypes that we're given of the hero, is he has to be, killing and killing and killing and stopping evil and all this stuff, and no clue that there's something way more powerful that is actually much more fun to be than Batman. Because Batman is just constantly fighting
I'm not saying I don't appreciate Batman. If he's listening, I do appreciate his work. But what I'm saying is that that's perpetual conflict. And unless we, at some point we get tired of that and say, wait a minute, our normal state is not like that. We're something totally different. And I'm ready to stop constantly fighting.
Well, I think that a lot of our views of the Creator is like that Batman character you're talking about, where he's going to come and zap everybody with lightning if they don't be good little boys and girls, and
especially if you don't believe what you're told.
Well, yeah, and then we're also taught that there's somebody on the outside of us that's going to get rid of all the bullies for us, and that's not true either.
Yeah, and also that you're no good yourself.
Yeah.
That's a big one. Because if you're not any good in yourself and only this outside source is going to save you, then most of what you really are stays unconscious.
And so that's a misunderstanding.
That's really hard to grasp. It's just a misunderstanding. And it's this brilliant being of light that was created by, the source of light, thinking that it is just the opposite, some really dark little unintelligent, uncreative, worthless being. And, that's not exactly accurate, to put it mildly. But the only way you can know if it's accurate or not is if you drop the fake identity that we've been carrying around for a long time. And that's the main thing that our rulers want to make sure that we never do, because they know if we really do that, it's so powerful, not in the ego sense. It's powerful in that the source starts to flow through you. That's totally different. And that kind of power would make it impossible for them to make hell on earth here. And they don't really want to be stopped, but ultimately they need to be waked up just like anybody else.
And it's not ego, because it's not, even though it's coming from inside, it's not my pseudo self. It's really like you said, it's the source self. So it doesn't. I don't have to be narcissistic about it. I can just say, well, that's because it is this power.
One of the main ways people are kept afraid of anything that's power inside themselves is that it's all evil, it's all ego, it's all self-deception, it's all this horrible stuff. But the real power is not even on that level. It's where the source is living your life for you, and you just get the fun of being able to observe the whole thing happening.
Yeah. Well, I kind of had a chance to practice with it or try it out, and it wasn't something I planned, but just like we were talking about a minute ago, it's just something that flowed through because I was open at the moment, and I was just observing. I like that you bring out to observe. It helps me step outside of my programming when it gets too overwhelming or bearing on me too much. So I was just watching. I had milked the goats, and I was just watching them. I had let them out, and they went up the hillside. And sometimes they try to go through the electric fence. It's not on, it's just off, but I don't have enough money to fence it properly. So, but they stay up there basically most of the time. But I was just watching them, and the little girl goat, the baby, she decided to go through the fence that was already pulled down halfway, and she started tangling her legs up all in it, and then she got kind of scared, and she tried to run out of it, and she finally got out. But then the old grandma goat decided, instead of I used to call her the trouble goat, but now I renamed her the good girl goat, just so she wouldn't be getting in trouble. But she has a tendency to do things, and she decided to follow the little girl into the massive entanglement instead of walking along the trail on the inside of the fence where she's usually supposed to. And it was really funny. I decided just to sit there, and instead of yelling at her, I was just going to sit there and watch her and see what she's doing. And it was almost funny because she tried to go through it, and then she started getting caught, just like the little baby had, and then she started pulling on it and dragging the fence down more, and then she backed out. And then she decided to do it a second time. And she reminded myself of
trying to prepare for being a human, right?
She reminded me of me. It was really funny. So I'm just looking at her, I'm observing, and I'm just I'm laughing inside because it just started reminding me of me. And she tried more than once. And then when she's in the thick of the mess, and I was watching her, I thought, that I thought toward her. I didn't say anything, but I sent her, my thoughts reached her. And my thoughts were, why don't, instead of trying to do that a third time, why don't you just go inside the fence post instead of outside of it, and it might work out better. And as soon as I thought that thought, that's exactly what she did.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one of the normal beginning level abilities that we get, is to communicate to animals so that they pick it up immediately and respond. And it's really fun. You can do that with wild birds, or at some point even insects, and you start wondering, wait a minute, how come I never noticed I could do any of this stuff? And, it's not scary or bad or anything like that. We're supposed to be in harmony with all the life around us. And, there's old paintings of St. Francis and stuff with all these birds landing on them. And that means that's anybody. You don't have to have a official recognition that somebody votes that you're a saint or something. You just start getting back to being a normal human, and it's amazing.
It was so neat, because then I realized that power was source power flowing through my mind to that goat's mind, and immediately she got it.
Yeah.
It was neat.
Well, and for that moment, you didn't believe it was impossible.
No, and I didn't even think it up. It just happened to me and her.
Exactly. It sounds like the whole thing was a play being put on for you, so that you could be observing all this stuff.
Yeah, because I guess my goats too, they probably reflect me a lot. So if they're having a bad day, it's probably because I'm having a bad day or something.
It could be, yeah. But wow, great demonstration though.
Yeah, I thought so. And I found a home for the baby boy goat, and he's not going to get eaten. He's going to be a breeder, a milking goat breeder. So he's not. He's going to live.
Good.
So on your school, I was wondering, what about the male animals? What happens with them? What do you do with them?
This is a really important point. Is I know that in the long past, well, not that long really. I'm just talking a few thousand years ago. They understood that the animals providing milk were doing this wonderful service, and they knew that you don't kill anything unless it's a life and death self-defense type situation. So they had some system where they never had to kill the old animals that stopped giving milk, or the babies that were males that they didn't need, in quotes, because one male is good enough to make sure all the goats stay pregnant. And so nowadays they just kill all the rest. But I know there's a way to do it so you don't have to do that. And the only way to make milk, raw milk, organic raw milk, an ethical thing to consume is if it's not involving killing all these animals. And almost, it's nowhere on the planet that I know of is it being done with that in mind. They all just say, well, it's economically, inefficient. We have to kill all the males, etc. But I don't believe that. I think that that's one of those situations where there's an answer and there's a way to make it a successful dairy production operation and not kill those animals. One element that might play a part in it, and I don't really have the answers yet, I'm looking at it, is that some goats, I think they've been raised in France, are bred twice in their entire life, and then they keep producing milk for the rest of their lives. It might be a little bit less milk, but it's still good.
Yeah, I was realizing after he left that I had no idea that he was, I thought he was totally weaned. I had never seen him nursing, but once he was gone, OMG, she has such a full udder, I can hardly milk her. She's got way too much milk.
Wow. Interesting.
So apparently he was drinking at least a gallon a day, so I'm like,
exactly, and that's the other element in that better dairy model is you have to let the babies have the milk that they want, and then you share and take the rest. And that would be unheard of in most of the commercial dairies now, because anything that lowers the profit is unacceptable. And what I want to bring back is that, there are ways to make profit, but it should always be contingent on completely ethical business. And that's not just to the people, that's to the animals. And I want to demonstrate that, but I don't know all the details yet.
Well, I think that sounds wonderful. And I was getting just enough milk for me when, all this was happening. And now I realize I really didn't need to breed them, because I didn't breed the older goat, and she's just doing great. She didn't need to be bred. And so it's
she's still giving milk, you mean?
Yeah, she's given just plenty, enough for me, just in that one goat.
There are some goats that have produced milk for years without being bred.
Right.
And that would change the economics of the whole thing.
And the breeding of them it's a pain to go through. A lot of it. I had no idea, so it was a good experience to learn, but I don't think I'm breeding them next year. I was like, whoa, that's a hard job going through that.
There's another market that's becoming apparent now to add money to the people that have goats or cows, and if they're organic and you're not feeding them chemical food, then you're actually also producing organic manure. And organic manure, even though most people don't know it yet, is the only kind of manure that's safe to put on the garden. Anything else has GMO genes that are transferred to the soil organisms and anything that eats the plants that grow there, and it's just biosphere contaminant. So anybody that's still producing organic manure has a valuable commodity, whether they use it themselves or sell it or both. So that might be a little bit more of a justification for, a way to get money from the males.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. Yeah. Well, I'm trying to feed them better, but it's really hard. It's so hard to find good food for them.
I know, it's being eliminated, but one of the things I want to do at the school is somehow inspire a lot of people from the younger generation to become farmers. So, because there's a huge unfulfilled market for organic animal and people food. And there's 2 places in the country that I found that were teaching organic farming, but that's nothing compared to what's needed.
Wow.
There should be lots of organic animal food everywhere.
Yeah.
And that's also that having millions of small farms is an essential ingredient to national security. Because if your country is depending on food from giant corporations where it's all poisoned, that eventually destroys the population. But if you've got thousands and thousands of small organic farms that are really organic, then the health of the people can be preserved. So the people that have a few animals like that and crops and things, they're in the health business, really.
Wow, I think that your school idea is so needed that Source will find a way to work that out to get that started.
If it's supposed to happen, the money will show up from somewhere. We're talking to people that know families that have enough money that they could fund the whole thing without even noticing it. But, are they interested in this kind of thing? I don't know. So Probably the right person's out there. I'm not consciously aware who they are yet.
Well, it's definitely needed. I mean, there's no doubt that it's needed.
I think so. It feels like it, and there's so many, what Dara, the lady who's going to be on tomorrow night, was talking about. There are all these families. There's like, I don't know, she's guessing maybe 1 million autistic kids who have been destroyed by vaccines in America now. And their life of their families is almost unbearable because, I mean, they need constant full-time attention, or a lot of them would, self-destruct. Some of them have to wear football helmets because they're smashing their heads into the walls all the time because they're in so much distress. And they're trapped in a body that won't work and communicate and stuff like that. And she said they really need help, and that most of the medical system would only give them drugs, which makes them worse later on.
Wow.
So, well, and that's just
I know
one
that. Yeah, I know the gut has a lot to do with it. I was just talking to a friend today who lost their employee because of something wrong with his gut, to where he had a big abscess and a hole in it. And so my friend was telling him about GMOs, and that's BT corn.
Yeah, that sounds exactly like GMO stuff.
Yeah, BT corn. And how many people eat GMOs? Almost everybody.
Yeah, and it's the similarity and the tying together of all life forms, because the way that the BT kills the worms that it's supposed to kill is by making their gut full of holes on a very small level. And so what the chemical companies were saying is, oh, those are insects. They have nothing to do with human beings. They're completely different. And it turned out that's exactly what happened to people that eat the GMO stuff.
Yeah.
So,
wow.
Insects are not infinitely far away from people. We're all interdependent.
Yep.
And other life forms are more aware and intelligent and conscious than we have any idea.
Well, yeah.
They're just different.
Right. But, I mean, okay, the hay, for one thing, the only hay that you can buy at the feed store is orchard grass, basically for grass hay, or GMO alfalfa. And the grass hay, the orchard grass hay, is heavily sprayed. They spray the trees, and they're probably fruit trees too. They spray those so heavily, and then they cut the grass that's under the orchard trees, and they sell that for the animal food. In most feed stores, that's what you get. So I thought it was meadow grass, because that's what this one store usually has.
If you're just looking on the surface, it looks like pretty green hay, right?
Yeah, it's grass hay, and because I won't buy the alfalfa hay, and so I got a bale thinking it was meadow grass, thinking that's not going to be so sprayed. Well, they didn't even tell me that they switched it out for orchard grass at that particular store, because I go all the way to that store, so I don't have to buy orchard grass. So I'm driving home with it, and I start getting a migraine. I'm getting sicker and sicker every minute, and finally I go, oh, it's the hay. It's sprayed.
Could you smell it?
No, not really, but I could feel it making my head just explode.
Right.
It hurt me, but I didn't really.
Some of those chemicals are so strong that parts per billion are deadly.
So I turn around. Yeah, I turn around. Yeah. I'm like a canary. I can tell right away. It affects me immediately.
Actually, that's good, because the people who can't tell are still damaged by it. They just can't feel it.
Right. So I turn around. I go back to the store, and I took it back. And then on my way home, I went past a house, just somebody's house that had horses, and they were advertising forage hay mix from a local person's yard that grew it. So I got it for half price, and I got way clean hay. Man, it took, I don't think I'm going to buy it at the regular feed store anymore. I'm just going to go to people that grow it in their yard, because
that's way better. Because then you can just ask them, and you can tell it by feeling if they're being honest with you. Did you spray any of this stuff? Did you put fertilizer on it? What did you do? And usually they'll tell you. We have to do the same thing when we're looking for sources of organic raw milk for people. Is I've been offering to call the suppliers because they're listed on realmilk.com by state. And a lot of them are scared, like in Florida, where you're not even really supposed to give it to your pets. And so you have to let them know that you're not a government agent trying to chap them. It's like trying to buy heroin or something. I mean, not that I know what that's like because I don't do it, but it's gotten to that point, and you just have to, then you get a chance to talk to the producer and say, you know, what do you feed your animals and all the details, and then you know what you're buying. And I think that's better anyway, you're supporting local growers.
Right. Yeah, so that's my plan now. I can't even buy the sacked grain anymore. I just have to either pay 3 times as much or find something else besides grain to feed them.
Yeah, exactly. The quality is more important than the quantity. So even if they eat a little bit less, if it's really good food, it's a lot better.
Right.
Lots of animals have died from eating GMOs.
Yeah, it affects the animals too. And like, if my chickens eat a GMO corn, what's going to happen to me if I eat their egg?
Your gut bacteria absorbs the GMO genes, and it makes a mess. It's not good. So it goes
from the chicken's gut to its egg? Or from the goat's gut to its milk?
They're finding it's transferable all over the place. It's even transferable into soil bacteria. Wow. If you wanted to design a way to ruin the biosphere, GMOs would be a brilliant plan.
Well, they're everywhere.
Yeah, they are. I mean, they've found GMO corn pollen in the remote mountains of Mexico, where some of the corn originated. So they've done a great job on polluting the whole planet as much as possible.
Well, I think
that's why I'm thinking, you know, what you're talking about with consciousness and how it affects events in your life is the beginning of learning what it can do. I think it's our only chance to do something that can turn this degree of destruction around.
Right. Yeah, I went to the health food store, and the lady there was all excited because she found organic corn to buy for the health food store, and so I bought some. I just looked at the very end to see if it was rotten or not, and I didn't really unpeel one all the way, but if I had, I'd have realized that it's GMO, even though it was organic, and even though it was at the health food store, because all the little rows of corn were straight. They weren't kind of haphazard like more of a true organic would be on corn.
So somebody's getting it certified, you know, illegally, I guess, if that's true, because at the moment, GMO is not allowed to be certified organic.
Yeah, so it's the labeling. You can't trust the labeling anymore.
Yeah, so the best you can, I mean, if you ever have a chance, you can find out from suppliers and talk to them when possible. It's not always possible, so we just have to do the best we can. But ultimately, we need millions of real organic farms starting all over the country right away.
I would say, I mean, I've had a friend grow corn, and they had heirloom seed that was, you know, from seed that they had kept gathering from generation to generation of their corn for like a decade or more than a decade. And, you know, they lost their seed bank in the fire, but when they did grow the corn, it didn't look like all straight rows. The little kernels were more different sized. You know, here's a bigger one, here's a littler one. It wasn't really, the natural corn isn't all lined up straight like a little soldier.
Yeah, I've seen it vary a lot. You're right. I mean, and the colors can be all mixed up and stuff like that. But there might still be a non-GMO corn that has straight rows. I'm not sure. I really don't know.
Okay, well, maybe it's okay.
Check it out. It might be okay. Because, I mean, selective breeding can do things like that, which is all right. So the GMO companies try to say that it's the same as selective breeding, but it's not. Selective breeding is just helping what nature does naturally.
All right. Well, maybe it's okay, but boy, it looks too perfect.
Yeah. Well, you might talk to the owner if they care about it and say, let's call up let's find the source who grows this corn and talk to him.
Okay.
And a lot of times you actually can.
Mm. Okay.
And the owner shouldn't mind because they would like to know.
Right. Well, they don't usually get it. It was just a freak thing. But I've had that happen at the farmer's market where it's not what it's touted.
I mean, a lot of GMO growers go into farmers markets thinking that people will assume if it's a farmer's market, it's all organic, but that has nothing to do with it.
Right.
So you have to question the growers. I've done that in a farmer's market, and they've so far been really honest and say, yeah, I spray all this stuff with this chemical, and this is GMO, and or some of the people in farmers markets just buy it at a wholesaler and bring it to the farmer's market.
Oh, no.
And it can be GMO stuff or whatever. So we're in a situation where you just have to ask and find out.
Well, I found a source for raw almonds that are not certified organic, but they're even better because these guys didn't jump through that hoop. They just totally do it the same way they've been doing it for decades, which is just to never heat it and to never spray it. And they were honest about that, and they said, we can't tell you it's certified organic, but we can tell you that we don't spray it and we don't heat it.
Okay, what about chemical fertilizer? Do they use that?
Oh, that question. Okay, thanks for reminding me. I'll have to ask them that.
Yeah, check on that, because even if they do, they might start considering changing that too, because the chemical fertilizer messes up the whole soil life. And that's what eventually makes them need to spray, because the bugs sense that the plant is not healthy. And if they avoid the chemical fertilizer and do things like let grass grow in the field and mow it for a mulch and leave that on top, they cut down the amount of water they need, and it also becomes fertilizer.
Okay. Well, if they haven't sprayed for decades, they probably are doing it right, but I will ask them.
They probably are, but you might ask them that. And if they're in a place where the weeds and grass grow in their field, you also need to make sure they understand how valuable that is, because that's fertilizer growing right on site. You don't have to till it in. You don't have to do it. That's really valuable for the soil and for the trees. And you don't till it in, you just cut it and let it lie there.
Right. Well, that's how I fertilize the lawn. I cut the lawn and just leave it lay there. Exactly.
The soil just keeps getting better every year if you do that. This thing about using a grass catcher and throwing away the grass is really dumb.
Right.
They know that if you do that, you're going to need fertilizer.
Okay. Very interesting.
It's pretty sophisticated, yeah. But once your mind gets kind of clear, you're way more sophisticated than they are, so you can figure it out pretty easily.
Well, it's asking the right questions, and they start just coming to you when it is clearer. And I guess it's detoxing the mind is just as important as detoxing the body. And so
yeah, absolutely. I think they're really connected. The body's just a projection anyway. Okay. So it's all coming from consciousness.
Well, and then
we're in an amazing movie.
We have to expect to go through, the detox. The detox is not always pleasant when it's coming in.
Yeah, exactly. But, there are ways to speed it up, just like you use cleaning the colon with water for the physical body. You know that pattern has got to be duplicated on the mind level. So when you're allowing, you can't use physical water in the mind, it doesn't work. But you can use really beautiful energy, and you can see all these amazing frequencies and colors coming in that are all cleansing, and they just wash away all the junk. And that you can do. You can do it right away as soon as you don't believe it's impossible.
Okay. Well, I was trying to figure out how to do the Bill Bankston idea, and what came to me was all these beautiful scenes that I have already experienced in my life. So I was writing them down, and as I was doing that, I remembered that when I was younger, I used to have a necklace. I can't remember. I had a couple of them. One was like an emerald one, and one was like a ruby one. They were just glass, but it was cut with different angles, and so I would look through it toward the light, the sunlight, and it looked like the whole world was either green or red or what. It was beautiful. It was like just jewels me as a kid, you know. And so I thought, well, if all these beautiful scenes are going through my mind of peaceful they're mostly nature scenes of when I was a kid and stuff and growing up. And I thought, wow, if there's a way I could somehow connect the things that you've been teaching, you know, all these little tips like relaxing into it, etc. I thought, well, if I could link somehow those to the beauty of the things I thought of, maybe I could use that as fit it into his system somehow.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the color that you see when you look through some gem, you can see that in your mind anytime you want. And let the energy of that color flow through you. It affects everything that you're experiencing. So you can do that whenever you want. You don't even have... You can do it with the most amazing gems that you'd never physically find, and you can still look through that light. It's almost like taking a shower in colored light. It's really has amazing effects.
Right. I noticed that water also makes the energy more intensified.
Yeah, water's nice. Water's amazing. Water is a liquid crystal that's programmable. So it picks up the energy and the thought and the feeling that you're experiencing when you're in it.
Wow.
Yeah, it's just, remember that movie that we talked about called The Water Movie, and they had these lab technicians set down to stare at a glass of water for half an hour, thinking a certain kind of thought as well as they could, and then they would flash freeze that water, and if the thought was beautiful, the crystals would reflect it when they flash froze the water. So
right.
The flash freezing is just to show what it's doing, but you don't have to freeze it to make that happen. It's happening as soon as you think of the water and whatever you project toward it, and then it has that effect on you.
What about doing like a room that you could go in, like a cube you could go in that's translucent, and it's just full of colorful water? Would that be like a healing type?
Oh, yeah. I mean, what you realize is you're like a sculptor, artist, painter that is an unlimited artist, because all the things that you need to work with on the mind level are already there. You don't have to go buy your art supplies. You have them with you. So you start realizing that this is the backdrop that you're working against, the physical world, but the art that you're drawing is on the energy level. And even if people don't understand why, they're going to feel it. And what I'm really after is not just the benefit from right now, because you'll have a lot of fun with that, but also eventually, we're in the beginning little stages. If we put this together on a more complete basis, I think that we can transform the energy atmosphere of this planet to be affecting what's going on here in a way that the negative stuff won't be comfortable staying around.
Wow, so that's great.
You don't have to protest or anything. You're just doing your work in your own studio. But this is what we're practicing for now.
Well, so it doesn't matter what size either. It could easily be the whole planet then.
Oh yeah, you have no limits on size. You know, the physical body is projected in one particular size, but it's so relative, because if you look from the perspective of one atom, the human body is gigantic. But if you compare the body to the galaxy, the body is smaller than a grain of sand, but the consciousness in it is wrapped up in it, but it's unlimited in scope. So you can stretch out your feeling and perception, not just galaxy-wise wide, but, unlimited, really. And that, when they talk about skills like remote viewing that Dr. Bankston was playing around with, this is where it comes from. When you extend your awareness by feeling into some remote place, whether it's next door or across the galaxy, you're actually there in your essence, but it takes a while to get comfortable enough to drop the really deep belief that you won't be able to perceive anything over there. That belief is really deeply ingrained, and once you get to that, then you don't have that limit anymore either.
Wow.
You can see why the rulers want us unconscious, drugged, weak, sick, and unhappy and fighting each other. Because that's a distraction from what we're talking about now. And if we get to this, there's no way that they can keep making things bad. It's not even a question.
Wow.
Because the scope that you can get to is blocked if you hold on to malice toward anybody. And they're very attached to that at the moment.
But like you said, it can't stay in that presence.
No, and they eventually can't hold on to that forever either, because it's a dead end. It's just that we're allowed through free will to experience being evil as long as we want to, until we're really, really tired of it. And at that point, even for them, it starts radically changing. And you can help them now by what you're doing.
Wow. Yeah, that was my epiphany for the week. Help them now.
Yeah, they're not separated from us. It's only a belief that where your physical body is, that's where you're limited to. In reality, you can send out this information, not information, but energy and awareness to impact them along with everybody else. And there may be some of them that have been doing what they're doing so long that they are tired of it. And we might see some begin to defect, which would be very nice.
Right. Well, the subconscious, is that what you're talking about versus the conscious? Because the consciousness...
Yeah, on the conscious level, they're going to be resisting everything that you would think of doing.
Okay, so you're talking subconscious level.
That's where they're wide open.
Ah, that's the Achilles heel, right?
I think so. But you have to approach it from a level that's a finer frequency than the one that they're on.
Oh.
If you have the frequency of attacking them on their level, then you can't get through. It's just a endless fight. But if you get on a more foundation level, then you get right through.
You're talking like what my epiphany to nurture them would be more like that. It would be a finer frequency.
Yeah, exactly. They become like the baby who's just gotten diverted into thinking that they were going to destroy the world and a few things like that. But you're seeing them from a different perspective, and it's no big deal anymore. When you're looking from a really low, limited perspective, it looks like they're these terrifying, overarching, horrible hierarchy that can scare everybody. When you see them looking down at them, and they're like little kids, it's just, you're not upset or scared by it. And you know that from where you're coming from, you're the adult, and you have the obvious ability to harmonize whatever mess they're making. You can clean it up right away. So I think that's where we're going.
Wow, that sounds potent. So the other thought that just now came to me is, if I'm going to be nurturing them, and they're like little kids, and I'm like this caring mother, then I could just sing them to sleep. I could sing them a lullaby, and they'll just fall asleep.
That's right. The whole thing is to get more and more into your expanded real state.
Wow.
Because if somebody believes they're 2 years old, they can't really be like a mother. But as they allow themselves to feel that, oh yeah, I'm an adult, I remember now, then it's all different.
Wow. That's great. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's something to look forward to. It's going to be fun. Mm-hmm. And I know it's bad. The fact that it's so uncomfortable for so many people right now is just a motivation to do our work with a little bit more sincerity, and focus, and not be sloppy like we have been used to before. And that doesn't mean tense, not with all this force, but paying attention, relaxed attention.
Relaxed attention. I don't think I'm going to be as gullible now that I've come to this degree. I think I'm going to be, this realization degree I have just jumped into.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll go back.
If I don't think you will either, but if you want to really keep the forward momentum going as well as you can, recalibrate your understanding so that instead of thinking that, like, for example, let's say you just went from first grade to second grade, okay, just as an example. Mm-hmm. From the first grader's perspective, second grade is like PhD level. So when you get to second grade, there's a certain amount of complacency that tries to come in because you're so happy to have gotten there. Mm-hmm. But if you, as soon as you can, recalibrate saying, I'm in second grade, I need to do what will allow me to get into third grade as soon as possible. Then you're really paying attention and looking for that, and not just looking back at first grade and saying, wow, I really got clear. Assuming that compared to third grade, it's still kind of foggy now and you'd like to get it more clear. And so you let that in.
All right.
And
that's a good
keep
tip.
Stepping. Yeah. Yeah, but
I don't want to get...
It sounds like it's going really well the way you're describing it now.
It's more than really well. It's like awesome, fantastic. I mean, there's no words for it.
Yeah. So you might as well enjoy it.
Oh, I'm enjoying it. Well, I had the best day today that I've had in a long time, and my energy level just zoomed when my whole mental energy was good. My physical energy.
Yeah, I mean, that's an intense lesson in itself, because most people would have told you there's no connection. Your physical energy is low because you have this list of diseases and conditions, right? And no matter what you think and fool yourself about it, you're still going to be in this mess. And that's not really what happens at all. I mean, all of the chemical reactions in the body change with the thought pattern and the emotions especially.
It's incredible.
The body is taking its orders from you. So whatever beliefs you're allowing to stay there, the body tries to make those true by what it does.
Well, I didn't even have to say anything to it. It just picked up on the mind thing going right. And then they took off, and I'm just sitting there watching the whole thing happen.
That's right. You've got actually a really simple job as the CEO of the company. You just set policy and keep being open to new discoveries and things like that. And you have trillions of, individuals helping you, the cells in the body and the parts of the mind and the mind itself as the kid running the program machine. They are going to try to be in harmony with wherever you want to be. And so, when people are just absolutely addicted to self-punishment and fighting and chaos and constantly looking at all the conflict, the body and mind assume that's the reality and they make that true. But they can just as easily do it with incredible beauty. There's no reason that's harder. In fact, it's easier, actually.
It's more like not doing anything instead of doing something.
Yeah, because what's trying to come through you, the force that is keeping you alive, has a tendency to go toward perfect harmony in any situation. and in your body and everywhere else. So the only reason it hasn't up to now is we've got all these beliefs that it can't.
Wow. It's just the belief system, period? That's it?
Well, let's see, what else could it be? I think that's what the mind has made the programming in harmony with. So if we believe the world is really in this terrible chaos, then we'll make sure that prophecy is self-fulfilling.
Wow.
And the mistake that people make on the subtle level with this is they say, okay, I'm just going to say that everything's great. That doesn't work. And the reason it doesn't work is because on the surface they say everything's great. There's no chemtrails in the sky, there's no GMOs, everything's beautiful. But underneath, they're fully aware of what's really going on. And they don't for a minute believe that everything's great. So it's not that you lie to yourself and say that, there's no nuclear power plants or anything like that, because they're obviously there. But what you open up your awareness of is the incredible beauty that already exists internally. And then, you live in that, and the outside world changes. And what I'm hoping we can do, during this little experiment here, during this lifetime, is make that real enough so that the sources of torturing everybody here turn into something nice.
Wow. So that internal beauty, are you talking about the package from Source that came with the baby?
Yeah, it's not just a package, it's a continuous flow, or we would not be here.
Okay. So it's
like a river. Yeah, there's this huge river that's beautiful that is just flowing through you all the time and out. You process it by how you relate to it, and then it goes out. And if you become conscious of the inflow of this all-harmonizing, beautiful energy from the source, then that's what you're going to be transmitting.
And that's what you're talking about by internal.
Yeah, if we finally figure out our role and we do it, then there's so much healing power flowing through each single individual that nobody's going to hang around this planet that is trying to destroy it, and the ones that are here that are trying to destroy it, they're going to be shocked because they're going to start getting interested in doing the opposite, and they won't know why.
That's great.
Yeah, they may go to their, company psychiatrist complaining or something. Like, what's wrong with me? Am I becoming good? Do I have to be killed? No. There could be some funny scenes.
Yeah, I have one other question about randomness. Is nothing is random? Is that true? Nothing is random?
Such a beautiful question. I mean, I can only give you my point of view from where I've gotten so far, which is not very far in the bigger picture. But the way it looks to me now is that it's impossible for anything in the created universe to be random at all. I don't think there's any such thing. So, in other words, every person is projecting a consciousness that is determining what's going to be going on the so-called physical level.
Okay, so it's the subconsciousness, right?
Well, yeah, it's not subconscious to mind, but it's subconscious to us. So you see, the value of mind when the kid becomes in a good relationship with you again is that all the subconscious that would not be opened up in thousands of years of psychoanalysis is already conscious to mind itself. So mind has access to all the information right now. It doesn't have anything unconscious. It's only when we try to look in its files that we don't see most of it.
Okay, so if it's already accessible to mind, and we are soul, then we are what it's already accessing.
What do you mean, what it's already accessing?
Well, if mind can access subconscious as conscious, that means that mind's already tuned into Source.
No, I'm not saying it's able to access Source per se. It's able to access information. That's about everything. Anything in creation has information that goes with it, that describes it, determines what it can do, and is the whole program for it. Mind has access to all of that, 100%. But it has no wisdom and no direction without us, and no maturity.
Oh.
So if it starts getting directed by its parent out of love, not fear or force, then you have an ally who is trying to help you, and that ally has access to all information.
Okay.
So if the direction is in harmony, then mind will use that information to do what you would like it to do.
Oh, wow. I think
instead of working against you, you know.
I think I'm just starting to understand what you've been trying to say. Wow.
Yeah, it's an amazingly powerful kid. It just can't run things well by itself. And it's been abandoned by us, you know, so we need to fix that.
So we have 3/4 of it if we're directing it, and we've got access to the wisdom and the maturity and stuff, and the mind has access to the information. Then just with getting mind's cooperation, we've got the whole ball of wax.
I think so, and the interesting part is that our mind is connected to every other mind in existence.
Wow.
So it's not just the information in our life. By resonance and other mechanisms, it can affect how other people's minds feel, even if they haven't been properly directed up to now. The resonance, as you get stronger and more conscious, the resonance that you're sending out gets more powerful. And there's nothing that the negative-oriented beings can do that would even begin to approach that.
Well, because they're going to start to be able to hear it, because it's going to resonate louder and louder.
They're going to start feeling in ways that they don't know why they feel like that.
Okay.
And think it's them. They're not going to think it's coming from outside. Because they think in terms of fighting and killing and weapons, and they've got it arranged so that nobody can overcome their weapons. This is on a completely different level.
I get it. They're going to think it's them, but really it's an influence.
They're going to wonder why they're going crazy and starting to be nice.
Okay, so that kind of answers the random thing, because if these minds are all connected, it really can't be random and still be orchestrated.
No, everything would crash immediately.
Right.
Yeah, all the planets would be running into each other all over the place. It's all delicately organized and balanced. The degree of organization in creation is beyond imagination. I mean, it's totally incredible.
I was looking at a flower on my watermelon plant today, and there was only one flower on it, the first one, and it was like this beautiful shade of yellow. It was like not bright like the cantaloupes. It was real pale, but it was just beautiful. And
they are incredible. If you could go into that flower, there's a whole universe there.
I thought, wow, this is too... It just struck me as just too awesome to be an accident at all.
Yeah, I don't think there's any such thing. If there are apparent accidents happening, it's because of chaotic attention that went to make it happen.
You mean
somebody's part?
Intentionally?
A lot of times, yeah, but a lot of times, no. You know, when people are just a slave to their own mind's programming, and everything is, you know, seeming to be random and chaotic and self-destructive and everything, then they experience that being true, and things start smashing into each other. But I don't think it's because the universe is not designed perfectly. It's because we have free will, and we make a mess for ourselves without knowing it.
But that is not going to change the fact that everything's ordered in the universe. It's just going to change the fact
not at all.
that one experience is going to be chaotic.
Yeah, which is also happening in exact order itself. But the farther you get along to harmonizing things internally, it becomes harder and harder for accidents to happen, because the energy field around you is going to be in harmony. Thoth talked about that in the Emerald Tablets, and sometime we'll get into that, but he was saying that when the polarities are balanced inside a person, they don't have accidents anymore.
Okay. Well, that's food for thought. I think I'm going to get into the tablets because I haven't finished it, and I would like to. That sparks my interest, so I'm going to do that this weekend. Well, hopefully I'll be able to do that this week. And
yeah, that would be fun. It's pretty interesting.
So it was due to balanced what?
The polarity is balanced inside a person. Everybody's got a male and female polarity in them. And it doesn't mean anything about genders or sexes. It's more like yin and yang. And if those are in harmony and balance, then a lot of things don't happen, one of them being accidents.
Okay, all right. Well, I better let you go because it's almost time, but thank you so much for all those explanations. This has been an incredible discovery week, and I'm just hoping that it just keeps going that way, and I like the tip about looking forward to third grade, so I will do that. Yeah,
it's waiting, so it's just going to keep getting better. Thanks for sharing all that stuff. It's really inspiring to hear about.
Thank you for all your brilliant answers. I'm starting to really understand that much better, how you explained it. So thank you.
It's neat. Okay, we'll talk to you next time. Have a good week.
You too. Bye.
Bye. Okay, guys, so we're just about done, but I think I told you, remember, tomorrow night is Dara Berger, who's going to be an incredible show, and Michelle Ford is going to be on her way back from Italy in the next couple of days, and I'm really thinking that it may work out to have her come in and tell us about all the things that are going on in Italy, where they're trying to force everybody to inject their kid with 4 times as much poison as is currently allowed or currently required, and bring in all these heavy fines, and they're talking about taking away people's kids if they refuse to do the vaccinations. It's pretty intense. I mean, I don't think people know what they're going to do. Right now, they don't know what to do except march in the street. And so Michelle is there was there today doing that with them. It's 9 hours later than it is than Pacific time anyway in the U.S. So as soon as she gets back, I want to ask her to do a full show for us on what it was like there and what there is to learn about it and what those people think they're going to do. You know, because I'm sure that they're really in a hard situation and don't know how to really fix this. And I did invite you to go to both sites, lostartsradio.com and lostartsresearchinstitute.org, which is what we're talking about tonight on details of the school. It doesn't have to happen exactly that way, but there's one potential scenario there that there's a written description of. Also, Alex Jones's news show, which is of immense value, is in the form of a playlist on our website, lostartsradio.com. And Doug's got that updated all the time. New articles and videos, educational ones are there that, may be of use and interest to you. There's donate buttons for people that have the money. And then hopefully the objective is that you find something that we talk about during the show, especially on Saturday, that you can actually use and practice and try out during the week, and then come back and tell us what happens. Or if you can't watch the show and want to send ideas or feedback, send them to richard@lostartsradio.com, or talk about them on the forum during the week. That's totally free, and let us know what happens. So have a great week, and thanks for being here. I appreciate your friendship and being with us on this trip And let's see what happens to us this week, and I'll meet you back here tomorrow and next Saturday.